Revealed. The incredible moment a widowed CEO found hidden hope in a waitress. Will she say yes? Eleanor stood at the edge of her world, wrapped in the chill of expectations from her tech startup, balancing the legacy of her late husband like a tightrope walker above a yawning abyss. The corridors echoed with the laughter that once filled her vibrant home, but now they merely reinforced the emptiness she felt. That night, under the weight of her own solitude, she found herself craving comfort food, a sign, she thought, that perhaps even a CEO needed a respite from the heavy burden of authority, alone in her fancy loft. The diner was warm and bustling, the smell of fried food and coffee wrapping around her like a cozy blanket. It felt like an embrace from a community she had almost forgotten. Everyone seemed to know each other, laughter punctuating the air. As Eleanor slid into a booth, the waitress, Anna, approached with a radiant smile that lit up the dim space. Eleanor noted the bright eyes with a fervor that seemed to pull her in, igniting a spark of recognition within herself. "Coffee?" Anna asked, her voice sweet and melodic, as she jotted down Eleanor's order. "Yes, please," Eleanor replied, sensing warmth from the young woman, a feeling she hadn't experienced in long. As they exchanged polite banter, Eleanor began to share pieces of her life, surprising herself with how easily the words flowed. She saw in Anna's enthusiasm a girl with dreams of nursing, a reflection of resilience she thought had been snuffed out by countless board meetings and relentless pressure. But the contrast was undeniable. As Anna spoke of her shifts, dreaming of patients she'd one day care for, Eleanor felt a pang of heaviness in her chest, a twisted kind of envy mixed with unease. For every laugh shared between them, the weight of her impending merger with a rival, a charming and ruthless man whose ambition mirrored her own, gripped her harder. The board expected her to solidify her husband's legacy through strategic partnerships, not personal ones. Doubt fluttered within her. Would they even understand this connection forming over pie and coffee? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sipping the hot brew, Eleanor was lost in her thoughts, feeling the heat of the moment wilting under her corporate reality. Here she sat, with a burgeoning friendship that felt raw and real, pulled inexorably toward the shadows of financial decisions that never seemed to consider her heart. What would her life look like if she chose the unthinkable? The temptation of vulnerability, to embrace the connection with Anna, contrasted starkly against the tight bonds of duty weighed down by her husband's memory. Desperation clawed at her, a fear that if she chose the uncertain path, the judgment of those who expected her to honor tradition would come crashing down. In that dimly lit diner, where laughter echoed like a distant song, Eleanor felt her pulse thrumming with a mix of hope and dread. Could she break free of the chains tightening around her? Would she risk it all for love? Or would she remain trapped in the gilded cage of her own making? The clock on the wall ticked steadily, centering her thoughts on a crossroads she had never foresaw. What does true success look like? And at what cost? Eleanor stared into her coffee cup, swirling the dark liquid as if it could reveal answers to her spiraling questions. She wrestled with a chaotic mix of emotions, the solace provided by Anna's warmth contrasting sharply with the suffocating expectations placed upon her shoulders. Was it fair to allow herself the luxury of friendship? Or was it a betrayal to her husband's legacy? Inside the glass walls of her corporate life, success meant metrics and mergers, not the genuine human connections forged over pastries and coffee. Yet here she was, drawn inexplicably to a young woman whose undimmed spirit mirrored the vitality Eleanor once carried. Did Anna not resonate within her as someone who, much like her, longed for a future unfettered by past constraints? Maybe I can be the one to navigate this new territory, she thought. As Anna returned to see if Eleanor needed anything, the young waitress's unfiltered enthusiasm sparkled anew. Eleanor took a breath, the fragrant steam wrapping around her like a protective shroud. "Tell me more about why you love nursing," she urged, her curiosity expanding. Anna launched into tales of moments that lit her up the first time she got to hold a newborn, the grateful smiles of patients recovering under her care. Each story painted vivid images of fragility and hope, fueling Eleanor's desire to connect deeper. In the wake of Anna's passion, Eleanor recognized a genetic thread woven through their tales, the urgency of being true to oneself amidst unwarranted doubts. "I admire that," Eleanor admitted, her voice nearly hushed in reverence. "Your dreams are alive." They both shared a moment of silence, a wordless acknowledgement that existed beyond the platitudes of their respective realities. And then a decision began to crystallize within Eleanor. What if she couldn't break free completely, but could take deliberate steps toward a life enriched by the very connections she had shunned? She might not abandon her responsibilities, but perhaps she could include this warmth, the laughter, the friendship in her journey. Returning to her corporate environment, Eleanor was forced to confront the growing rift between her aspirations and the unyielding demands of her position. The merger loomed unexpectedly like an apocalyptic storm. It demanded every ounce of her attention. Yet the light of connection, the authenticity shared with Anna, began to act as a beacon. She found herself entertaining thoughts of change, not only for her company but for her own personal growth. As Monday approached, Eleanor prepared for the high-stakes negotiations that would determine her fate. She envisioned entering the boardroom no longer just as a widow cloaked in grief, but as a woman armed with her newfound perspective, one woven with threads of emotional resilience and the light offered by another. When she stepped into that room, it was no longer just about capitalizing on her husband's legacy. It was about integrating those vibrant breaths of passion she had absorbed from Anna. Would the board accept this evolution? Would they see strength in embracing the personal as a pathway to professional success? The day weighed heavy on her shoulders, but beneath it all brewed an undeniable necessity to confront her fears. Could she stand firm at that diagonal of her past self and the woman evolving within? Would she find the courage to challenge the expectation to maintain a facade that no longer served her? As the clock ticked forward, she felt both anticipation and dread curl within her. This meeting had the potential to reshape everything, the way she operated, the way she perceived success. And as her thoughts lingered on her unique dilemma, she wondered, would she rise to her new reality, or would she get swept away by the tides of tradition once more? With these vital questions pushing for answers, Eleanor prepared to face the inevitable challenge that awaited. Unbeknownst to her, the stakes would rise even higher than she could foresee, entwining the threads of her professional life with the budding relationship that had ignited her restless heart. Eleanor stood at the entrance of the boardroom, the walls adorned with reminders of past victories etched into the glass panels. The familiar scent of polished oak and coffee mingled in the air, awakening the businesswoman within her. Yet her heart raced with a different kind of urgency. In the dimly lit room, the board members settled into their seats, faces a blend of ambition and skepticism. Eleanor took her place at the head of the table, acutely aware that she was no longer merely a placeholder for her late husband's vision. She was a vessel of her own purpose, and that realization coursed through her veins like electricity. "Good morning, everyone," Eleanor began, her voice steady despite the chaos within. "Thank you for gathering today to discuss our upcoming merger." As she laid out her vision, integrating metrics and human emotion, she stole glances at the faces masked in professional indifference. For years, their reactions depended on numbers, not narratives. Yet, the spark she had felt with Anna lingered, whispering encouragement. She spoke not about profits alone, but about the shared human experiences that could define the future of the company. There is a profound power in connection, she emphasized, her pulse quickening. This merger presents us with an opportunity not just to join forces for financial success, but to cultivate an environment where our employees feel heard, valued, and inspired. Silence enveloped the room. Eleanor could see the wheels spinning in their minds, questions forming but not yet voiced. Did they sense the shift in her? The hope that had been ignited beyond her corporate duties? Suddenly, Jonathan, a senior member known for his cutthroat tactics and stringent views, leaned forward. Eleanor, those are admirable sentiments, but our stakeholders care primarily about the bottom line. How can we quantify this connection business? His skepticism slammed against her like cold wind. Eleanor inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to retreat into familiar defenses. Instead, she visualized the glowing warmth of Anna's stories, the excitement of healing, the essence of care that brought life to a mundane career. What if we implement a feedback loop, an open forum for employees to share their experiences and ideas? She replied, her voice gaining confidence. By valuing their input, we not only engage our workforce, but also unlock innovative solutions that could directly impact our efficiency and productivity. A murmur of contemplation rippled through the board. For the first time, Eleanor sensed a crack forming in their rigid armor. This was the risk she needed to take. Catching sight of her reflection in the glass panel, she barely recognized herself. The ashes of sorrow had begun to shift as she stepped closer to her own identity. Could embracing vulnerability be her greatest asset? As the discussion continued, Eleanor noticed a thin line between conviction and vulnerability, one she hadn't dared to tread before. She could see others glancing at one another, faint nods beginning to emerge as her words took root. While mergers are fundamentally about numbers, she continued, it's about the people driving those numbers as well. We must be the leaders who inspire, who ignite a passion within our employees. That's where true success lies. That's how they thrive, and thus how we'll thrive. Just as she felt their resistance beginning to melt, Jennifer, another board member, interrupted with a raised eyebrow. That sounds like a soft approach, Eleanor. How can we sustain profits with feelings? The mere implication that she was being overly emotional ignited a defensive spark within her. But instead of wilting, something deep inside Eleanor transformed. The warmth shared with Anna now fueled her determination. I'm not dismissing the importance of figures, Eleanor retorted, her tone unwavering. But let us not forget that behind every statistic is a story. When we blend empathy with strategy, we cultivate loyalty, creativity, and above all, a culture that attracts top talent. As the words settled, Eleanor knew she was straddling a pivotal moment in her life. Could she remain resolute in this belief when faced with the inevitable pushback, especially from those resistant to change? The thought of Anna's dreams lighting up her path surged within her, an anchor that made her feel simultaneously terrified yet invigorated. With a pounding heart, Eleanor prepared to address their concerns further, ready to navigate the wave of opposition. Yet beneath the surface thrummed a deeper challenge. How much of her truth would she continue to unveil in this space that had long been shielded by expectation? The air thickened with anticipation, and Eleanor was acutely aware that the outcome of this merger was only just beginning to take shape. Would she emerge from this meeting not only as a leader but as a true agent of change? Or would the old expectations pull her back into a shadow? As Eleanor cast her gaze across the table, steeling herself for the storm of questions ahead, a resolute thought formed. This meeting was merely the beginning of her fight, not just for the company, but for her own narrative. And she felt more determined than ever to seize it. But as the dialogue progressed, she sensed an impending confrontation with a vital question that hovered just beyond her reach. Was she ready to embrace the risks that came with wielding her voice? The ensuing silence wrapped around Eleanor like a vice, pressure radiating from the probing eyes locked onto her. She felt the weight of expectations not only from her board but from within herself. This wasn't merely a strategy meeting. This was a declaration of her commitment to redefine what leadership meant to her. Let us consider the cultural implications of this merger, Eleanor proposed, attempting to shift the tone. Imagine a workforce that sees itself in the company's vision truly represented and understood. Doesn't that drive loyalty? Another member, Charles, cleared his throat, his tone skeptical yet intrigued. You talk about culture as though it's a magic bullet. What are you actually proposing? His question echoed in her mind, digging at her resolve. Had she wandered too far into the realm of ideals, neglecting the concrete steps that would cement her ideas? But rather than falter, a newfound sense of clarity cut through her uncertainties. She had to ground her vision in actionable strategies. A culture of feedback, open communication, and innovative thought doesn't just appear overnight, Eleanor replied, drawing from her years of research into effective teams. It requires a structured framework, monthly town halls, anonymous suggestion boxes, and a dedicated team to synthesize and implement these ideas. Each suggestion strengthened her position, binding her rhetoric to reality. She could sense a change in the room. Heads began to nod slowly, the board members' postures relaxing as they mentally adjusted to the pragmatic nature of her proposals. However, Jonathan was still skeptical. While all of this sounds well and good, he interjected, who will take the lead on these initiatives? And how will we quantify success? We're still ultimately responsible to our shareholders. Leadership fosters accountability, Eleanor explained, her voice steadier than ever. While we'll designate a project leader for each initiative, the real success lies in shared ownership. Empowering employees to contribute to our vision ignites responsibility. Their successes will shine in the metrics we report to stakeholders. The room grew still as they processed her words. Eleanor leaned forward, emboldened by the engagement. We can collect data that tracks employee satisfaction alongside productivity measures. It's not an either-or scenario. We can intertwine happiness with profitability. A thriving employee culture translates to lower turnover rates, higher productivity, and better profits. With every word she spoke, her confidence solidified, teaching her that her voice held weight and substance. Questions bubbled from the board members, some probing and others supportive. They began to challenge her, but Eleanor found each exchange invigorating rather than stifling. These queries pushed her to refine her vision further, revealing her hidden depths of knowledge and passion for employee experience. It felt liberating to stand her ground in front of skeptics. Yet a nagging thought flickered beneath her resolve like a soft pulse. Were the board members engaging with her ideas out of genuine interest or simply to appease her? Their acceptance didn't mask the intrinsic challenges of leading a company defined by numbers over narratives. As the conversation continued, Eleanor pressed herself deeper into her own resolve. If she wanted to transform the company's culture, she needed more than just adjustments to get the board on board. She needed to establish herself as a relentless advocate for change. This journey wasn't just about a merger. It was about evolving her professional identity. Just then, Jennifer jumped back in, sharp as ever. Sounds compelling, but we've all read the studies. Having engaged employees isn't a guarantee of success. What if your proposals fail? The question pierced through Eleanor like an arrow. It brought forth the ghost of doubt she fought to shoo away. She could mess up. What if everything went wrong? Yet another layer of resolve settled within her, solidifying her sense of purpose. Henry Ford once said, "The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing." If we don't take risks to innovate our culture, we'll stagnate, she asserted, feeling a fresh wave of adrenaline surge. As leaders, it is our responsibility to embrace the unknown and pivot when necessary. Eleanor glanced at her colleagues, searching for acknowledgement that her determined stance had an impact. She wasn't merely advocating for softer values. She was arguing fiercely for sustainability in a world quick to judge. The tension in the air reached a crescendo, and Eleanor found herself at the center of a storm yet felt a sense of stability amidst the chaos. She knew this was just the beginning of their discourse, a gateway leading to deeper exploration of her leadership ethos. But one stark realization emerged clear as dawn. She couldn't solely rely on others to carry her vision forward. She needed to seize the narrative herself. Could she fully embrace the potential of adaptability and risk? Or would she retreat and let her ideas be swallowed whole by the status quo? The answers loomed ahead, waiting to be uncovered in the next board meeting that was yet to come. Eleanor took a deep breath, mentally preparing for what was to come, sensing that everything she had done thus far was merely a prelude to the true test of her resolve. The next chapter of her journey was approaching rapidly, and the time had come to fully embrace not only her leadership but the very essence of who she was in this new realm. Would she rise to the challenge or yield to fear? The board meeting concluded, but Eleanor's mind raced as she exited the room. The weight of her words lingered like a tangible thread, weaving through her thoughts. Could she maintain this momentum? With her heart pounding, she knew that this was a pivotal moment. She had taken a stand, and while she felt buoyed by the progress made, uncertainty gnawed at her. In her office, sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the scattered documents and vibrant post-it notes that charted her evolving strategy. She took a seat, closed her eyes, and let her breathing slow. In this moment of tranquility, she envisioned the company transformed by her vision, each employee engaged and inspired. Yet doubt crept in alongside the reverie. Would her commitment shape a reality, or would it dissolve beneath the pressure of profit margins? With a determined flick of her wrist, she gathered her notes. The next step necessitated a more defined approach to rally support for her ideas. Eleanor resolved to create pilot programs that would illustrate her vision's tangible benefits. If she could produce visible results, it would be harder for the board to dismiss her concepts merely as lofty ideals. But each thought sparked a question: who would participate? To embed the culture she envisioned, Eleanor needed to foster champions within the organization, voices that echoed her convictions. This required forming personal alliances, reaching out to those who shared her outlook but may not have yet expressed it. A sudden realization struck her. She recalled the enthusiasm she'd witnessed earlier during the brainstorming session. She needed to invite those enthusiastic individuals to work collaboratively on the initiatives, showcasing their worth while embodying the culture of shared leadership she championed. She started a list of potential champions, her fingers dancing over the keyboard, bolstered by the spirit of purpose coursing through her. Several names bubbled to the surface, including Maria, a junior analyst whose innovative ideas often sparked discussions. Eleanor quickly drafted an email, inviting her to lunch. "Let's discuss how we can start showing the board the impact of our culture," she wrote. Propelled by her own momentum, she sent it before her nerves could tell her otherwise. As she paced the floor of her office, Eleanor mulled over the weight of possibility. There was potential for success, but also a looming fear of failure. She knew the stakes. This wasn't just about preserving her reputation. It was about redefining the organization's ethos from within. The thought of failure loomed large, casting shadows over her earlier resolve. If her bold initiatives faltered, would that spell the end of her vision and possibly her career? She wrestled with the idea that she'd be perceived as a leader who couldn't deliver. However, a flicker of defiance ignited within her. Adversity could be invigorating. It could sharpen her instincts and reveal deeper layers of her true potential. As she exited her office, Eleanor found herself wandering through the sprawling office space. Each department represented a facet of her vision, but they also mirrored the individual stories of the employees within. She understood now that the path to leadership was tangled in the aspirations and fears of those around her. Every person mattered in this intricate web of success. She stopped by the break room, observing clusters of colleagues engaged in animated discussions. Their camaraderie reminded her of the human element so often overshadowed by corporate rhetoric. Inspired, she approached a group, intrigued by their laughter. "What's the discussion?" she asked, her voice bright and inviting. As they spoke, Eleanor gleaned insights that reignited her spirits. Their passion, grievances, and dreams blended into a tapestry of what could be. These interactions stoked a new determination within her soul. Perhaps genuine conversations could serve as the undercurrent for her cultural shifts. The day closed with an unexpected encounter. En route to her car, she found herself deep in conversation with Eric, the head of marketing. His insights into employee engagement resonated with her. He spoke of the subtle but crucial need for trust in leadership. Eleanor realized that she couldn't forge this new path alone. By aligning herself with others who shared her aspirations, she could create a collective force capable of yielding real change. Pulling away from the office, Eleanor reflected on the day. The intensity of the challenges ahead was undeniable, yet so were the seeds of hope blossoming around her. As she navigated the city, her resolve solidified into a fiery commitment. This was her moment to not only champion change but to become a catalyst for transformation rooted in authenticity. Yet, she knew the next board meeting would be fraught with increasingly critical scrutiny. What strategies could she employ to convert each stakeholder's skepticism into advocacy for her vision? The time had come to fully harness the power of connection, making her own leadership journey not just about her resolve, but a unifying experience for others. The dawn of her new leadership chapter awaited, one filled with both promise and peril. Would she be able to transform the opposition into allies, and would the board be ready to embrace a revolutionary shift? That question loomed larger than ever, and Eleanor could feel the tide of challenge rising. Eleanor awoke the next morning with a jolt, dawning realization crashing into her thoughts. The gravity of her leadership challenge was not just a question of strategy. It was a matter of emotional engagement. Her vision required her to tap into the aspirations of those around her. She felt compelled to awaken a collective hope, and it began with her own vulnerability. In her morning briefing, she scanned attendance sheets and performance reports, noting the disconnect between numbers and narratives. Those metrics didn't tell the stories of employees like Maria, who had potential yet remained overshadowed by seniority and traditional hierarchies. It was clear to Eleanor that her first mission would be to create spaces where voices like Maria's flourished. Her first meeting of the day was with the operations team. As she entered the conference room, a wave of skepticism washed over her. The atmosphere was thick with an unvoiced reluctance. Fellow leaders folded their arms, exchanging wary glances. "Let us dive right in," she began, projecting confidence, even as insecurity quivered beneath her exterior. "I've noticed our efficiency numbers lagging in several areas. I want to hear from each of you what's one thing you feel could be improved." A few nods and some murmured agreement signaled tentative participation. Eleanor felt her heart race. This was a crucial moment. She needed to foster an environment where dialogue outshone dictation. Let us brainstorm solutions together. As the discussion unfolded, she facilitated by listening intently, asking probing questions that encouraged further exploration. Soon the conversation transformed. Skepticism morphed into dialogue fueled by shared challenges. Eleanor could see the unearthing of innovative ideas, the spark of collaboration igniting memories of how vibrant her vision could be. However, as they shared ideas, a voice simmered at the edge of her mind. Ben, the operations director, who was known for his resistance to change. His skeptical gaze felt heavier than lead, and Eleanor knew she needed to confront his doubts head-on. "Ben," she said, focusing on him, "I'd like to hear your thoughts too." The room fell silent, all eyes on him. He hesitated, but the pressure of collective interest shifted him into action. "It's fine to dream, Eleanor," he said, a hint of sardonic bitterness coating his words. "But we can't just throw resources at problems without understanding the consequences. It's not that simple." A direct hit. Eleanor's heart thudded in her chest. She understood his concerns after all. She harbored similar fears about failure in her pursuit of change. How could she counter his skepticism without appearing defensive? "Fair point," she responded, striving to maintain openness. "We can't approach transformation lightly. Maybe we can explore a pilot program together. Let us start on a smaller scale and assess the results before wider implementation. It's a calculated risk." With a surprised look, Ben leaned forward. Maybe focusing on one department for now would lessen the tension. Eleanor's heart leapt at the proposal. He was willing to engage, to collaborate. Perhaps he could be a reluctant ally. "Exactly. Finding common ground is crucial for us all. You just inspired me, Ben." She smiled, empowering him through recognition. The remainder of the meeting shifted gears, with hesitant members gradually sharing their insights, slowly cementing Eleanor's belief that vulnerability and authenticity trumped authority. She left the room with a buoyant heart and a clearer understanding of what it meant to lead from a place of shared humanity. Yet doubt snaked further into her consciousness. What if her newfound connection with the operations team didn't translate into the broader corporate dynamics? What if Ben's skepticism was only the beginning of deeper resistance from others? Navigating the complexities of leadership loomed larger than anticipated, presenting a tapestry woven with ambition, empathy, and the specter of doubt. Exactly how far would she need to venture outside her comfort zone to win in the next board meeting? As she sat down to review her strategy notes, the thought settled heavily upon her. Was she prepared to confront her biggest fears, yet those of the opponents who might resist her vision most fiercely? The thrill of the challenge lay tantalizingly close, but the stakes had never felt so high. Eleanor sat at her desk, finger tracing the edges of her strategy notes, her mind a whirlpool of thoughts and aspirations. Each line echoed with the voices of the operations team, and the words she had exchanged with Ben felt both like a lifeline and a weight. Confronting leaders in the boardroom was one thing. Facing their resistance head-on was another game entirely. The clock's hands crept toward 10 a.m., marking the time for her next meeting, a vital check-in with the marketing department. This time, she sensed the stakes were higher. Would they be as receptive to her vision as the operations team had been? Or would they mirror the skepticism that often flowed through the walls of the corporate fortress? Eleanor walked into the room, armed with her intention to inspire rather than intimidate. Yet, she noticed them familiar faces marked with fatigue, some barely hiding their boredom. It was a concerning reminder that her role as a leader demanded more than just strategy. It demanded intentional connection. "Let us begin by sharing some successes from this quarter," she said, softening her tone to ease the palpable tension. "What has worked well for us?" Names were mumbled, and a few reluctant anecdotes were shared, but Eleanor realized her strategy needed to pivot. She had been trained to tackle challenges with data-driven solutions, but now she found that she had to dismantle the barriers in her teammates' minds. "What if we shifted focus?" Eleanor proposed suddenly. "Instead of just looking at numbers, how about each of you reflects on a project that ignited your passion? What inspired you to push through the hard moments? How can we capture that energy moving forward?" This time, the response was a bit more animated. Hands shot up, and suddenly their stories were flooding out. A forgotten initiative, a creative campaign that almost fizzled, yet thrived due to one individual's passion. It became clear that enthusiasm could spark fire where routine had dulled the embers. Eleanor was riding the wave of newfound energy. But then, as if drawn by her rising hope, a voice broke through. "Sounds great in theory, Eleanor, but passion doesn't pay the bills," said Marcus, the marketing director known for his straight-shooting cynicism. "We need realistic goals. We can't rely on feel-good motivations." Her heart sank slightly. It was the mirror of Ben's earlier skepticism looming over her once more. Did Marcus feed the doubt that threatened to unravel the thread of purpose she had carefully stitched together? Narrowing her focus, she locked eyes with him. "You're right, we can't make decisions based solely on passion. However, a workforce that thrives on inspiration often outperforms one driven only by necessity. How about we redefine our goals based on both metrics and motivation? Can we align them?" His stare softened, but only slightly. "That sounds abstract. Then let us make it tangible right here. What can we do to ensure motivation is part of our structure?" Eleanor thrust forth her challenge, sensing a growing pulse in the room, but still aware of Marcus' reticence. A few project managers started brainstorming, and Eleanor saw movements of agreement flickering in faces that had once appeared disengaged. Within moments, the conversation shifted from accusation to collaboration. Ideas flowed, their collective imagination replacing the trepidation that had loitered too long. Yet Marcus, resolute, wasn't giving up. "How do we measure inspiration?" Eleanor hesitated, a deep breath grounding her. The question tugged at her professional integrity. A challenging dilemma: proof or faith. Inspiration is not easily quantified but can be felt through engagement levels, feedback, and innovations. It's a balance. We will need to check in with each other regularly to gauge how successful we really are in fostering that environment. As the dialogue deepened, Eleanor found herself energized. She wasn't just battling the doubts spewing forth from her colleagues. She was learning to articulate her vision through the tension. But now, as time wound down and the meeting came to a close, another realization dawned. Despite the intellectual progress made that day, she felt unease in her gut. Marcus, and perhaps more, would continue to have a hold on the momentum she craved. What new counterpoints would emerge at the board meeting? Eleanor's vision relied on a convincing collective front, yet what if she lost ground before she even stepped foot in that room? As the meeting concluded, questions loomed over her thoughts like a fog. How resilient was she in her pursuit? What awaited in the high-stakes challenge to come? A nagging urge tugged at her. Was she ready to wield her emotions as her greatest strength? Or would they falter when the pressure ramped up? The time had come to confront this truth. She would face the non-stop chase for legitimacy and acceptance in a world that was not always kind to change. Tomorrow's board meeting would reveal all, setting the stage for true confrontation. Would she rise to the occasion, or would she crumble beneath the scrutiny of those she sought to convince? The moment drew closer, and Eleanor's heart raced at the uncertainty waiting to unfold. Eleanor stood before the mirror, adjusting her blazer, a deep breath attempting to steady her racing thoughts. Today's board meeting would be the crucible that defined her leadership, yet self-doubt wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. The room would be filled with the very people who could either champion her vision or tear it down. Smoothing her hair back, she caught her reflection, her own gaze stealing into her resolve. It was time to push past the anxiety. She had weathered challenges before. This would be another checkpoint in her journey, albeit a significantly tougher one. As she arrived at the conference room, the air felt thick with expectancy. Colleagues snatched glances, their murmurs bouncing off the stark walls, but Eleanor locked eyes with Ben, who offered a reassuring nod. It was a small gesture, but it fueled her determination to stand her ground. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady as she surveyed the table, filled with faces both known and dauntingly unfamiliar. "Today, I want us to engage in a conversation that challenges the status quo. Our company's progress hinges not just on our metrics but on our collective inspiration." The sudden silence spoke volumes. The board had been conditioned to hear figures, numbers, and market analyses, not the poison of empowerment that drummed silently underneath. Last quarter showed promising results, she continued, bringing up the graphs she knew they would prefer, but we're at a crossroads. Continuing on our current trajectory will yield diminishing returns if we don't infuse our goals with the same passion our employees bring to their work. Eleanor observed a subtle shift as she spoke. She could see a few heads nod, although the furrowed brows of Marcus and others remained entrenched in doubt. But she pressed on, determined to catalyze a new mindset. What if we established a dual framework for our objectives? One that is dictated by hard data but also inspired by emotional engagement. The response was a mix, a few scribbled notes while others remained stony. "Eleanor," Marcus interrupted, skepticism draped over his words like a cloud. "With all due respect, crafting a poetic narrative won't secure our next quarter's revenue." Her heart raced at the familiar baiting, the provocation reigniting the earlier doubts she had banished. Yet she felt a boldness rising, igniting a fire she hadn't fully recognized within herself. "I understand your worry, Marcus, but let us reconsider. When was the last time you felt inspired at work? Was it in a meeting full of numbers, or was it in a moment that made you believe your contribution mattered?" The room shifted uncomfortably. Marcus squinted, but she sensed some walls beginning to crack. He mumbled something, but she pressed forward, unwilling to let the moment slip. Inspiration can lead to innovation. It can re-engage a workforce tired of chasing a bottom line. We must give them something to believe in if we are to harness their potential. Silence enveloped the room as she concluded with a simple question. How can we catalyze that inspiration in our next initiatives? As responses trickled in, tentative at first but growing more robust, Eleanor felt a thrilling recognition coursing through her. In every story shared, there was a spark, a flicker that could illuminate their plans. If nothing else, she had planted the seed of dialogue. As the meeting reached its crescendo, she noticed how Marcus looked less like a skeptic and more like someone reconsidering his stance. And that small glimmer of potential progress created an excitement she hadn't anticipated. But shortly after, seconds ticking away, an unsettling thought crept in. Would the commitment last beyond the shiny facade of the meeting? There lingered a tension in the air, unspoken, as if the boardroom itself weighed heavily against her will. Eleanor's resolve was palpable, but she understood that mere moments of inspiration were just the beginning. The real test lay in how they would execute those discussions in practice and how she would convert those moments into a consistent, sustaining culture of inspiration. As she walked out, Adrenaline coursing through her, yet tempered by uncertainty. She began planning her next steps. How would she create an environment where they felt safe to innovate and collaborate? The vision was clearer now, but implementation loomed large, and confidence was still a fragile armor. Facing doubt from within her team was the next hurdle in her development. What if those conversations from today unraveled in implementation? As she closed the door behind her, the weight settled anew. The true battle was about to begin. Was she prepared to turn borrowed hope into resilient action? As Eleanor stepped into the hallway, a whirlwind of thoughts began to form a strategic plan in her mind. The residual adrenaline pulsed through her veins, lighting a path of clarity through her uncertainty. She had taken the first step in challenging the board's perceptions, and now it was crucial that the momentum did not dissipate. With each step toward her office, she replayed her words in the conference room. Had they resonated? That mix of skepticism and curiosity in Marcus' eyes told her something had shifted, but doubt still gnawed at the edges of her success. How do you transform fleeting inspiration into lasting change? The sound of hurried footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. It was Ben. You did well in there, he said, enthusiasm barely contained. People are talking. Eleanor managed a shaky smile, overwhelmed by the mixed feelings of pride and anxiety. Maybe, but it's what comes next that worries me. Inspiration is easy to ignite. Fostering a culture where it thrives, that's another story entirely. Ben leaned against her doorframe, arms crossed. You've got their attention. Now capitalize on it. Maybe set up a workshop to brainstorm these ideas further. You need to keep the dialogue flowing. His words hung in the air, igniting a spark of determination within her. Yes, a workshop could work. I'll open the floor to discuss actionable steps. Real ideas. But then another doubt crept in. What if they didn't trust the initiative? What if their previous resistance to change undermined her efforts? What if they just leave the workshop with a few ideas but fail to implement them? How do I ensure they follow through? Follow through starts with you, Ben replied, his tone firm yet encouraging. Become the leader they can count on. You set the stage for ownership of the idea. Be present, ask questions, engage them in follow-up sessions. Show them this isn't just a one-off dialogue. His unwavering belief in her fueled her confidence. Perhaps he was right. It was about consistency and engagement. If she wanted a shift in culture, it had to stem from her leadership. Her actions had to match her words. Thanks, Ben. I needed that perspective. Eleanor entered her office, mind racing with plans. She began drafting her proposal for the workshop, highlighting the need for a safe space where ideas could be nurtured without the fear of criticism. An idea struck her. What if they could implement a monthly meeting dedicated to innovation where all employees could present ideas? She grabbed a notepad, rapidly jotting down ideas, her thoughts flowing freely. Suddenly, the phone buzzed, an alert snapping her focus back to reality. It was an email from Marcus. He wanted to meet, a personal invitation that felt like a challenge. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Was this an opportunity or a confrontation? She bit her lip, weighing the potential for dialogue against the risk of continuing their uneasy dynamic. This meeting could reveal whether he was truly shifting or if he still viewed her as an intruder. After a moment's hesitation, she sent a reply, accepting his invitation. It was time to confront her fear head-on. As she closed her laptop, Eleanor felt the bitter taste of resolve settle in her stomach. It was a step toward vulnerability, but growth rarely came without discomfort. She had planted the seeds of inspiration, but it would take courage to see them bloom. The stakes had risen. Eleanor knew she stood on the precipice of a deeper conflict, one that could unravel or strengthen her vision. Was she ready to stand her ground, even if it meant facing Marcus alone? The answer loomed uncertainly ahead, and with it, the next chapter of her leadership journey awaited, one filled with the promise of unforeseen challenges and revelations about her own fortitude. Eleanor entered the cafe where she agreed to meet Marcus, her pulse quickening with each step. She was acutely aware that this meeting was pivotal, not just for their working relationship, but for the cultural transformation she had committed to inspire within her company. Once a wall of skepticism, Marcus now stood as a potential ally or a formidable opponent. As she spotted him at a corner table, arms crossed, tension radiated from his body language. She approached with a mix of trepidation and determination. "Thank you for meeting with me, Marcus," she started, her voice steady. "Let us get straight to it," he replied, his tone direct. "I've been thinking about what you proposed in the meeting, and honestly, it concerns me. How can you expect this culture shift to yield measurable results?" Eleanor felt the rush of defensiveness rising, but she quickly grounded herself. This was a conversation, not a confrontation. "I understand your concerns. It's a valid question. But I believe that creating a supportive culture can enhance productivity and retention, ultimately benefiting our bottom line." Marcus leaned back slightly, observing her closely. "You talk about culture like it's some kind of panacea. We need to ensure that our team is operating efficiently above all. Numbers and profits are the heart of any business." Eleanor took a deep breath, recalling the moments that had ignited her vision of an authentic workplace. "But Marcus, if our employees don't feel valued or heard, they're not going to produce at their highest potential. Engagement translates into performance directly. We need to connect with the human aspect of our workforce." He seemed to soften slightly at her words, tapping a finger against the table as he considered them. "You really believe this connection will lead to greater efficiency, huh?" "Yes. Look at how creative solutions emerge when people are encouraged to share ideas and collaborate. I want to implement a culture that supports open dialogue, where everyone feels it's safe to innovate." Eleanor paused, choosing her next words carefully. "What if we ran a pilot project that tests this theory? A smaller team focused on implementing feedback from the ground up. We could measure the results in terms of engagement metrics alongside standard performance indicators." Marcus's eyebrows lifted in intrigue, showing flickers of consideration. "You're suggesting a real experiment. That could work, but I need to know you're committed to following through. A one-time thing won't cut it." Remembering Ben's advice about accountability, Eleanor nodded firmly. "Absolutely. If it fails, we'll analyze why and pivot. I'm not advocating for blind optimism. I want evidence-backed evolution within our leadership approach." "Let us say I'm willing to back this," Marcus said, crossing his arms even tighter. "You'll have to convince the rest of the board that you won't just make this all about feelings. They won't buy into a soft approach without numbers backing it up." Eleanor smiled, understanding the delicate dance of balancing metrics and passion. "I will build that bridge, but I can't do it alone. If we work together creating a framework that's both results-oriented and people-centered, I truly believe we can shift the culture for good." As their conversation continued, Eleanor noticed the shift within Marcus. The skepticism began to blur with curiosity that she could transform into shared purpose. She knew that none of their progress would matter without follow-through, and this was a critical step toward making human connection a critical facet of their operational strategy. After their meeting, Eleanor felt an exhilaration rising within her. It was far from a complete victory, but forging this reluctant alliance with Marcus marked a concrete step toward achieving her vision. Days turned into weeks, and she dedicated her time assembling a diverse committee of employees who shared her vision of cultural transformation. Maria eagerly joined, drawn to the idea of fostering an inclusive environment where her voice could make an impact. Ben also became a crucial ally, helping Eleanor navigate the complex dynamics of the board. With the committee, Eleanor organized the first workshop, laying the groundwork for an employee-led initiative that married inspiration with accountability. As faces lit up with excitement and ideas burst forth, Eleanor felt the momentum building, a vibrant force creating a ripple within the company. It was exhilarating to witness people once trapped in routine rise to express genuine passion. At the next board meeting, Eleanor felt transformed. She was no longer standing with uncertainty but with clarity. The workshop had produced tangible results. Engagement metrics rose as participants shared their insights, and colleagues began to collaborate more effectively. As her presentation unfolded, she witnessed the board members leaning in, absorbing the tangible success stories and data alongside the emotional narratives. Today, I am proud to present an initiative that is not only rooted in inspiration but backed by measurable outcomes, Eleanor declared confidently. By fostering a culture of feedback and open dialogue, we produce gains in employee engagement and innovation that will empower our growth strategy moving forward. And as she delivered her proposal, something remarkable happened. The resistance that had once characterized the boardroom began to shed. Eleanor could sense the shifting tides, her conviction rolling through the room, a tide turning toward acknowledgement and acceptance. As the meeting wrapped, Eleanor sat back, a wave of satisfaction coursing through her as she absorbed the reactions of her colleagues. She had ventured beyond the constraints of doubt and fear, and her once quiet dreams now echoed within the very walls that once felt impenetrable. But she knew this was just the beginning. Eleanor's heart swelled with pride, not just for her achievements but for the journey ahead, one marked by authentic engagement, bold ideas, and the unwavering determination to weave humanity into the fabric of their corporate ethos. With a smile on her face, she whispered to herself, "I've only just begun. Now it's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss these exclusive emotional stories that resonate with real-life transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people like you. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this story of overcoming. Join the community of true fans who understand the importance of support. Your actions matter."